In this video, I'm going to talk about Unit 2 Lab for CIS27. So for this week lab, you simply click on this page in Canvas and make sure that you go through this information. We are going to use Practice Lab, and when you click the link, it's going to open up a new tab. Make sure that we allow pop-up from our browser. Follow the instruction, complete all the steps. Click the Done button when you finish all the steps. Make sure you do this. When we click on the tab here, or the link, it's going to open up the tab. So this message will pop up, and it's going to tell you a little bit about exam prep. You do have options to go through and prepare for the exam. I will incorporate this as our practical exam part so you can see how well you do at the end of the class, and so you can prepare for the Security Plus certification. Now, I chose this particular module for access management, and if you enable pop-up, you will see another window showing, which is going to be the virtual machine. So we're connecting to the virtual machine via the browser. And what you can do is you can set up where it would be in the tab adjacent to your screen. If you have multiple screens at home, you can also drag it to your second screen. That will probably be best. But if you don't have a second screen, what you can do is you can adjust this window size and also take a look at the instruction provided in the original link. Just to do a quick run through with virtual machine control, you see this menu option here. This allows you to either right click, you can do Control-Alt-Delete, that will take you to the task manager option. And then if you want more information, and you can set up clipboard in case if you need to capture or copy something, and then your keyboard. On the right, this key shows that we automatically log into the device, and that's what you want. When the key is not showing, that's when you don't automatically log in. And if you put your cursor on to the next button, it shows that you are connecting through the console mode to the virtual machine using RDP, which is a remote desktop protocol for Windows. And this is a server operating system, so it uses RDP. And then you can view the device information. Now, if you want to reconnect in case it disconnects, you can click on this Thunderbolt, or when you need to close, you would click the X on the right. So the server operating system, usually it would show you the server manager as default. And what you see here is there are different server roles for the server. For example, this is Active Directory, and this is domain name system. So in order to establish a domain, the DNS needs to be added. And usually when you have Active Directory, you have to have the DNS settings. So you have to have the DNS role added with the Active Directory. Now, what you can do is you need to follow the instructions in Practice Lab. It will walk you through the steps that you need in order to configure the account, especially on the actual local system. I can simply grab this and move it around. I can minimize it where it would be on, it will be a tab on my browser here, so I can refer to that in the case I don't have the second screen. Now, when you look at the Practice Lab, if you're not familiar with this, you can power on various machines in the middle column here. And each of the virtual machine is labeled. Automatically, they would have one virtual machine that automatically turn on, which what we've seen with the server operating system, the server virtual machine. Now, if you need to power it off or reboot it, you can choose these options. You can reset it where it reverts its configuration to the original setting. You can suspend it where it pauses it, or you can refresh it. And once in a while, you might need to refresh it in the case where if it's not taking configuration, we are connecting via browser, so it's going to rely on your internet connection. So there will be times that you will be asked to select the right virtual machine to complete the task. Make sure that you pay attention to the name of the virtual machine in the instruction and click the appropriate virtual machine. So in the introduction, what you see is it talks about Practice Lab. This gives you a preview on what Practice Lab is. Now, each of the exercise, it tells you the objective, the learning outcome of the exercise. So we will work on using directory services in the server system for you to create users and group accounts. And then we are going to set the authentication method. We will look at biometric and use multi-factor authentication. Now, it tells you various modules, what you should be doing with this. And so after completing this, pay attention to this list, because this might be something that you want to include on your resume down the line, that you would know the process on how to implement some of these practices or even the technology that's involved with the practices. So how does this correlate with your Security Plus? In Security Plus, it will ask you for some hands-on practice with how you would implement possibly access management. So these are some of the areas that this lab particularly addressed. And the lab duration is about an hour. It might take you a little bit longer, that's okay, or shorter. But when you go through this, make sure that you read the instructions and the information that's provided to you. On the bottom, what you would see is you would see the page setting. So we start with page 1, familiarize ourselves with the lab and the information that's provided. Once we read through that, we're going to click Next. And Practice Lab gives you the topology, how the systems are interconnecting to give you the Cloud Lab environment. Now, here it would tell you the exercises. You might not use all the virtual machines. However, there will be specific virtual machine that will be asked for. And it tells you what each of the virtual machine would be. They're using Server 2019 for the domain controller. That's your BDC01 here. And your BDM01, which is this one. And that will also be Server 2019. So the main domain controller, the main domain is running out of the BDC01. The subdomain, the child domain or the member of it, is the other virtual machine, which is not on right now. And your local client system to this environment, not your computer, is a Windows 10. This is a workstation that's connected. So when you look at this topology, what you see is you have the BDC, which is the main domain controller. You have a member, which is a child that's connected to this domain. And you would have a Windows 10 that's going to connect to the BDC01. And then there will be various times that you would use Kali Linux, which is connected to the BDM01, which is the other server. So these are the available virtual machine. Like I said, we don't need to use them all at once in some lab. Once you go through that, you can look at the information and then go next. And here it talks about using Active Directory and directory services to manage. And this information is good. It gives you the details about Active Directory, how we would use that for users and groups. You can also use PowerShell with Server 2019 to be able to manage the users in a group through the shell using shell commands. So the first part is to create the account on the Windows 10 on the virtual machine and to set up the account permissions. Then you want to create the domain user on Active Directory and add the user into the group so the user would have group membership. So for this exercise, you would need to turn on the BDC01, which is already turned on at the start. Then you would need to turn on the Windows 10. So what we will do next is we need to power on Windows 10. And that might take a little bit depending on the time that you access this. So sometime it will be faster than other, and then also the response from this is web traffic. So you might, depending on your connection as well. Then once the Windows 10 is powered on, you will follow the step to create the local user. And as you can see, it pops up another virtual machine. So what I can do is I can, once it loaded, I can also minimize this, follow the instruction, and then reopen it by clicking on it. Make sure that you look at the right virtual machine and then complete the step. So when you do the work, make sure it's inside the virtual machine, not on your regular system. So if you're using a Windows 10 laptop like me or a desktop like me, what you would see is you would see two taskbar. The virtual machine is the inner taskbar that's inside the windows that popped up. So you wanted to configure in the virtual machine, not your local system. Now, as I mentioned before, it would show you how to access computer management. In Windows 10, what you can do is you can right-click the Windows button, which originally in the earlier OS, that would be your start, and you would see Computer Management Console here. There is a little bit of delay when you work inside the virtual machine via web. But however, sometimes it's more responsive than other depending on your connection again, and also how busy their server would get. So once you get into computer management, what you would see is a console that's going to give you various sub-management tools. For example, we can look at events, we can look at our task scheduler where we can schedule specific tasks like running anti-malware. Here is your local users and group. Now in local users and group, you can expand it on the left, or you can use the right folder. It's the right panel right here. Part of the console will give you the same thing. So if I click here, it shows me the same thing, or if I click here, double click, I would see the same thing. And so the users would be located in the user folder, and the groups would be located in the groups folder. So as you complete this, you can switch back and forth, or you can use dual screen to show. But as you go through, it tells you that you would need to go to the users folder. You are going to create a user. So now on the Windows 10 Pro, what we can do is go to the user folder. We can right click and choose new user, or you can also right click the folder itself and choose new user. Now the default users, there are some built-in users, that's what Microsoft calls it. So you might see some built-in users that look different on your system compared to the virtual machine as they modified this. And you can also take a look at the user account by right-clicking it, choose property. And it tells you what membership that user account has, the general information, what type of capability with the password, okay, whether the password expires or the account is disabled. So the guest account here, I'm showing this as disabled. Now, with the profile, sometime that would tie into login script for automation purposes in the case if the user is a roaming user or if they need a certain script to be able to access network resources, their profile path where that will be stored. With the roaming user, we can set it up where their profile would load based on the network path that stores the profile information pertaining to desktop, preference, applications that they need, etc. And then we can also connect the home folder possibly to a network shared drive, etc. So in this case, this guest account is disabled. Also, you can right-click an account and reset the password by using set password option, where you would type in a generic password for the user that they can use it to reset their account. And then you can also, with that, choose the option in which they must change the password when they first or next time they log in. So you can see different options here. Now the lab will walk you through on how to use the computer management console and the user directory. In order to do that, you will create an account for Mary Jane and make sure that we're using the same password. Otherwise, you will get confused with the instruction. Choose the user must change the password at the next login. So that's what you would normally do, is to create the user account, set it up on the local system through Computer Management Console under the user directory, set up where they can change the password so they can customize their password when they first log in. And once you complete the information, you can fill out the user information and be able to manage the account. So with the account permissions, we can look at the property as I mentioned, set up the user account on Windows 10, and then we're going to add her to the group. So we're going to add Mary Jane to the group, and in the actual system, if you select the group folder, you would see some built-in groups, and the group shows 2 little people. Compared to the user, it shows 1 person. So what you see is you do see some built-in groups, and we can also customize the group. And so for the backup operator, that's a built-in group that Microsoft equipped the system with. So you will add Mary Jane to this particular group. Then once we add the user to the group, and when you go through this step, make sure that you type in the name accordingly, otherwise it will not be able to find. But another way that you can add the user to the group is, let's say that I go to the property here, and I can go to member of, and I can choose this add button. Now, if you don't want to type in the name here, you can also click advanced, but in the lab it have you type in the backup operator. And the way that you can find the existing group is if you click find now, it will give you all the group that exists in the system. So if you don't know the actual name of the group, you can go through the advanced option by clicking this, and be able to click Find Now. And here you can select a group. So either way, it would achieve the same thing. So what you can do is you can, once you add the user, you can add them to the group, or you can simply go through groups and then simply inside the group, you can also add the user through the group settings. And if I do choose this, then I can type the username, or I can click Advanced to find a specific user to be added to the group. So it gives you multiple ways to achieve the group membership, adding the user to the group. But in the lab, it shows you how you can do that through the user account and searching for the group. Once you have completed the step, then you would use the server system, which is BDC01. So if it's already on, what you need to do is search for that machine, which is this one right here, and then be able to follow the steps and add the user account into Active Directory. Now in the management, this only gives you the status of the role. In server environment, you can go through the tools options to be able to access the feature in each role. So in the case if I wanted to add the user, I would go through tools under Active Directory users and computer. Here is where I would be able to add the user account to the Active Directory on the server system. So here it takes me to the users, but as you can see on the server, they have more container or more folders for computers. That's part of the database to access different resources. There's some built-in, and there are different type of container for a specific group. So, and the domain that we're using is practicelabs.com. So in this case, what we would start with is the user. And in the instructions, it tells you to go to tools, like I mentioned, add the users. And in the Active Directory, you would see the marketing folder on the left, and you can right click it to add the new user, or you can open it up and then right click on the right panel like what you've done in Windows 10 in order to add the user. So we're gonna add Josh Fairbanks and login information for Josh Fairbanks with the marketing, and then set up how this user gonna reset the password at the next login or change the password, and then finish. So once you're done, then you have accomplished number 1, the Windows 10 user account, creating the user and add it to the group. Number 2, add the user in Active Directory, and then the following task would allow you to add the user to the group. Very similar to Windows 10, but you would see the interface for the server Active Directory is slightly different. So once we add Josh into the proper group through the property sheets under Member Of tab, you can select the group and click Add. And the group that we're going to use for Josh Fairbanks on Active Directory would be print operators. And this group is to be able to manage print queues, possibly tasks with the print server. Then after that, what we would do is make sure that you look at the procedure and then continue to set up the authentication method. Now in this one, what you would do is you would set up the federation for multi-factor and also biometrics with the authentication for the user. And to find out more about federation, this is on page 4 of your lab. So we wanted to touch on what is federation, attestation, because at the end, we wanted to make sure that we obtain the objective, understand what we're doing. In the case if you have an interview or you see this on Security Plus, you would know what it is. Okay. Now, with the root trust, it talks about fixed, function, and programmable. So with fixed function, this is used for a specific reason. It allows us to perform management of keys and certificate for validation. So for example, if you use fixed function for, programmer for web app, then you can set that up. But for the programmable, that will be more complex tasks of the function to upgrade the root trust, so that will be changeable. Then go through and read through the section, and then the exercise is going to walk you through the authentication with the authorization and accounting implementing AAA, how to utilize cloud versus in the organization on site, the technology that we would use. This is touched on in the actual lecture, which is TOTP, time-based one-time password, or HMAC one-time password, so HOTP. And also, you would see a lot of organizations use SMS, sending out messages with the one-time code where you can activate your account or reactivate your account. And sometimes that will be used with token key, USB drive, or a key fob that would have a display, and how the static code is implemented. So here it gives you a lot of the terminology and what is being used in current technology being used for authentication. So it's good to look at that, like even Google and some technology company, or if you're doing bill pay and reset password, you see some of this being implemented. For exercise 3, walks you through how to incorporate biometrics, and it touches on what we've talked about in the lecture: fingerprint, retina, iris, facial scanning, voice, vein, gait analysis. With false acceptance and fault rejection rate, this is important to really assess when you're working with biometrics. So fault acceptance rate determines the probability that the number of incorrect requests is accepted by biometrics. And the formula for calculating is shown there: the number of correct accept requests divided by the number of authenticated attempts. So if I attempt 10 times and I got accepted 7 times based on the incorrect request, then that will be 7 out of 10 for FAR. But the false rejection rejection rate, that will be the number of false rejection divided by the number of authentications. So if we would look at the probability of the number incorrect rejected authentication. So if I'm a right person and I scan my finger and it keeps rejecting me 8 times out of the 10 times that I try, that will be 8 out of 10 for the FRR, or 80%. And we need to touch on the error rate, which is CER. This occurs when the accept and the reject rate are equal. So if you have 7 out of 10 and 7 out of 10, or if they're very close, then what you would have is you would have a crossover error rate. So for biometrics, it gives you the information on what are some of the things that you need to consider. And then for exercise 4, you will enable multi-factor authentication. In multi-factor authentication, this would allow us to work with smart card logon, which is very common in many networks for businesses. including, cashier, all the way to management, to sales, to technicians, to federal agents. So smart card logon and how to set it up. So on this one, you would use a Windows 10 and a BDC, very much like the first exercise. And it touches on the multi-factor, something you know, something you have, and something you are. And we want to incorporate at least 2 or more in multi-factor to make sure that we elevate our security platform. So in this, what you would use is you would use security token or soft tokens, which is more on software level, and also mobile bot authentication, which many companies use because it's low cost. Everybody has mobile devices, and biometric authentication method. So with the smart card logon, you first start with using the BDC01. So if you shut it off, make sure you turn it on. Go to Server Manager, go through the Active Directory users and computers, similar to the second exercise that we've done. And then you would go into Marketing and look for Jane Brown. And for this particular user, if you go to Marketing, you would see Jane Brown. And if you select the properties for this user, you would find that there is information about the user, from remote access to remote control to different area, or even general information. So the account information, we can set up logon hours. Like in the lecture, I mentioned that we can set up when they can log in and where they would log on to. If the account expires, you can set that up there. The group membership, and then the session. Okay. So if we wanted them to have remote desktop services, to work from home or to work from a different location outside of the company, we would set up the remote sessions and also the remote desktop with the path. Now, in the lab itself, it touches on going through the properties information and look at the account. Now, in the account tab, you would see the account options where you would enable the smart card interactive login. And with this, you have to have the hardware devices where it scans the card, and you also need to have the card set up. So there's additional process that goes into that. With the account information, if you click on the account tab, you would see that this is the domain of the user. Okay. And the smart card required for interactive option is here, and you would select that for the exercise. Then once you complete that step, you would verify by logging on to Windows 10. So turn on the Windows 10 if you haven't, it's not launched yet. You're going to log in using the password that's provided for that user. And then also you can test with different users. So on the last part, it gives you the summary of what you've been doing in the lab from exercise 1 through 4, the technology that you use, and you can also submit feedback, whether the content is relevant, is it clear, is it difficult, so that way they can improve the lab. Lastly, very important, that you click done when you finish with all the tasks. Without clicking this, it will not bring your grade over to the gradebook in Canvas. So if you don't click done, it will just only give you partial grades. So when you finish all the tasks, make sure you click done and close out or shut down the virtual machine. So to power it off, I can simply click power off here, or I can go through the virtual machine itself and I can close out the windows that I have enabled, go down to the Windows button and then click power off. Now on the server, when you power it off, it's going to ask you the reason why you need to power it off, because we don't really power off servers. So you have to select one of the options in order to power off, or you can simply shut it down in here, so that way it will not tie up the resources for other students and also on their server. When you get to in an event where there are a lot of students on that instance, it might slow down a little bit, but please let me know in case you have challenges logging on to Practice Lab. And I hope that you will be able to learn and apply the concept that we talked about in access management during the Practice Lab. Thank you for watching this video. Please contact me if you have any questions.